All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome back to Everything College Football Podcast. Today, me and Nick here, bringing our 2025 preview and prediction for the Pitt Panthers. Looking at this coaching staff: Pat Narduzzi, 11th year in the role of head coach; Cade Bell, 2nd year in the role of offensive coordinator; then Randy Bates, he's been the defensive coordinator since 2018. Not the greatest of off seasons for the Panthers, ranking outside the top 50 in both regards. Went 7-6 last year, losing in the game above Sports Bowl in a complete thriller. One of the best of both season. Look at the Pitt offense. This is a group that was pretty good last year, top 30 in scoring and then in passing yards per game. I thought they showcased great balance throughout the year. And this group's going to get back 7 starters, so a lot of growth is on the table. One of the most notable ones, of course, is going to be the quarterback. Eli Holstein came over from Alabama, was a 4-star recruit for the Crimson Tide. He was finally a guy that was able to get on the field. 6'4", 225. Has the makings of a player who can, I think, compete at a high level. Good arm to push it downfield. Good feel for the game when it comes to scanning and understanding his routes. Shows the ability to change up the tempo on the ball. I think he has good placement as well. Above average mobility for his size. I think Holstein's going to be very good, Nick. And obviously you've known about this guy since day one, being an Alabama fan. Are you shocked to see Holstein have so much success? And what are the heights for this young man?
No, I'm not shocked at all. I thought he was a really talented quarterback when he was recruited to Alabama. I thought he could be a really good fit in the offense in the future. Didn't quite work out for him. Alabama was a pretty crowded quarterback room, so he sought greener pastures, and he's found one at Pitt. I thought he looked really good last year when they plugged him in this offense, and he ended up being a really solid starter for them, and I was happy with what I saw with him. Started last year, 62% comp rate, 2,200 yards passing, 17 touchdowns to 7 picks, a 5.8% TD ratio, as well as a 2.4% interception ratio. So not bad on those numbers. Maybe the interception ratio is a little bit higher than you would hope. So, but he's also a decent runner as well. He can use his legs in the attack. 328 on the ground for him, 4 yards per attempt and 3 scores. So a player that I think is a really solid asset overall at quarterback, a guy that's confident in the pocket and a really strong arm, really good footwork as well, high football IQ, and a guy that can continue to be a strong starter for this Pitt offense. A great quarterback they have here.
And you look at their top running back, Cade Bell, when he arrived, he brought this guy named Des Reed with him from Western Carolina, and he was a superstar last year, so much so that I went ahead and named him my top running back in college football for 2025. Maybe that's a bit of a reach, especially since his numbers weren't anything too wild. 1,700 yards is good, but it certainly doesn't measure. But I guess some of the other guys have only 9 touchdowns. But when I watched him play last year, this guy was a difference maker. I mean, on every single, down and every single drive, he seemed to bring it every single time. Great versatility, special teams asset, great pass catcher of 50-plus receptions. I like his route running. The lateral quickness checks out. Great acceleration. The ball security, toughness for being a smaller back. And again, he's not going to be a workhorse on a weekly basis. A bit of a smaller frame, so not much help in pass protection. This is a guy who's incredibly versatile, incredibly skillful. He had 11 grabs for 155 against UNC, and then against Clemson in a very close game that they potentially should have won. He had another 10 grabs for 100-plus yards. So he's the definition of a dual-threat back, Nick, and I think he's going to continue to play at a high level this upcoming season.
Yeah, I think he's a really talented back. I don't blame you for ranking him so high. I think Des Reed really is a guy that can step up and be great for a team this year. 966 that is for him last year, just under 1,000 yards rushing, 5.3 yards per attempt, and 5 scores, about 88 yards per game for him on the ground. He's also a great asset in the passing game, 579 yards receiving, 4 scores, and 50-plus yards per game in that regard as well. So a true dual threat capabilities there. I think he's a guy that you can really do a lot with, a very talented player overall. This is a guy I like a lot, who I think will be really solid for this Pitt offense and can be a great leader. I think he'll get some more touches this year as well that will help with that. When I look at the rest of the running back room, I think Jules Goff's not a bad player. Derek Davis Jr. is not a bad player. Further down the depth chart as well, those are 2 guys that got a couple touches here and there. So I think the Pitt room, profiles out to be a solid room overall. I think Des Reed really can take that next step and be a great leader. They were 85th in the nation in running the ball last year. They should be better this year. They should find a way to improve those numbers.
Yeah, there was numerous games where they just did not play very well at all when it comes to running the football. And then there's other games where they really shined in, mainly against weaker opponents, though. I'm not really all that high on the depth in the running back room, though. I think it's quite weak. Derek Davis, he's done nothing in his career. Goff, he's a X3 star. Justin Cook, he was a solid pass catcher for East Stroudsburg College. He's going to convert to running back. He's 5'10", 175, so it kind of shows, the lack of depth they have. But Reed, obviously, is going to be great at the forefront. Look at the pass catchers. This is a very good wide receiver group. Kenny Johnson, 6'1", 200, is the top returning pass catcher from last year. Works primarily as an outside pass catcher. Raphael Williams was a mainstay in the slot, being right behind him in production. Did have 5 drops and struggled to be consistent, though. Sincere Lee battled health most of the year, but was pretty good when he was on the field. 3 scores and 254 yards on 19 receptions. Zion Fowler-El only had 2 grabs in 2 years. Deuce Spann only had a few more in 4 years at Florida State. So some of the portal ads really aren't all that great. Cactaris Hicks had only 150 yards in 2 years of his own at Louisville. So depth is pretty scarce, but I think the starting trio is great. You have a fifth-year senior tight end. Jake Overman's going to play a key role as well as the new starter. Solid room. Really like the starters. Depth, of course, is going to be very iffy, but I think in an offense it's going to command a lot of volume. They're going to need guys to step up, but I like what they have as the starters.
I like the starters. I think having Des Reed as well helps with that. Like we said earlier, Kenny Johnson returning 537 for him, 11.7 yards per grab, 3 scores. He was solid. Raphael Williams is a great red zone asset, 426 for him, and 6 scores. Certainly will find a way to be involved in the red zone. Sincere Lee was not bad either, 250 and 3 scores for him. Jake Overman had 160 yards and a score. As a traditional tight end, I think he's a solid asset that they return a big physical body. They add in Sontarius Hicks from Louisville, didn't do a whole lot for them at 150 yards on a few grabs last year. Also, Deuce Spann from Florida State, he didn't do anything there last year. So a guy that's just rounding out the numbers. Overall, though, I do like what they have headlining this. I think Johnson and Williams are 2 really good players. Williams is a great player in the slot that's a big red zone asset.
Now you look at the offensive line for the Panthers. Jeff Piercy comes over from Michigan, saw 400 snaps in 4 years. He even made 2 starts last year. He was pretty below average, though. Left guard picks up Kendall Stanley, who was a really good player for Charlotte last year, 6'5", 290. He was their starting right tackle, though, for pretty much the entire year. Looks like we'll be kicking him inside. Keith Govia was a good 3-year starter at Richmond. Solid pass blocker. Not so much in the run game, though. Lyndon Cooper's coming back. He was a standout center for the Panthers last year, being quite consistent in pass blocking. He was also above average in the run game. They get back both starters on the right side, and B.J. Williams at guard and Ryan Baer at right tackle, but both struggled a great deal. With Williams being the better of the two, though, offensive line, quite frankly, is pretty bad last year. I'm hoping the returning experience can lead to improvements. I think the O-line will be better, but to what degree certainly remains unclear. I still think they're going to struggle a good bit, Nick, probably a bottom half unit in the conference, but I think if they can, hold their own, it allows these guys to cook, and I think that's the expectation.
I think they're a bottom half unit in the conference. I worry about that left side that's completely revamped. It's going to be some sort of combination of Jeff Piercy, Keith Gova, and Kendall Stanley. So one of those guys will get the start at left guard, and then left tackle. I think Piercy will be the guy that you're going to want to start there for sure. I think the left side's a little bit weaker with, being a transfer-heavy unit. I think, Landon Cooper is not a bad asset at center. I think, B.J. Williams and Ryan Baer at the right positions, right guard and right tackle for Williams. Guard, Baer, right tackle are solid assets overall, though I still think it's a little bit concerning of a unit. It's a weaker unit, right? There's no way to beat around the bush there. I think it's a weaker unit. The left side I'm concerned about, and I'm curious to see how they develop in pass pro, if they can find some improvements there, because they were a little weak in that regard last year.
Look at the offensive verdict. I think Pitt should be really good this year on offense. Well, behind a pass-heavy approach, there's plenty of guys for Holstein to throw it around to, and Reed should be a dominant, versatile back. This will be one of the top 20 offenses in the country. I think can even grow into a top 10 or top 15 unit, I think, in the country. A- here. I think the offensive line, if they can really showcase improvements, Nick, they're going to be a force to be reckoned with, and I think they're going to be dangerous regardless.
Yeah, if the offensive line can make that big step forward with the guys they have, it could be a huge offense that will take a big leap. I love when they have a quarterback. I think Holstein's a phenomenal asset who's really good in the pocket, also has great legs, and can be used in the running game. Des Reed's a phenomenal running back who should take a huge step forward and easily clear 1,000 yards on the ground. Plus, he'll get probably 500-plus yards receiving, which will be a big asset for this offense. Some of the wide receiving depth is interesting overall. I like some of the key pieces at the top. The O-line concerns me. I think it should eventually turn into a better unit here. I like the coaching. I like what they're doing with this offense. They were a good unit last year. 32.9 points per game is certainly an impressive number. They should be around a similar number again this year.
They moved to the defensive side of the ball. I was kind of shocked by how poor this defense was last year. It's been the case the past couple of seasons, which is odd because Narduzzi's always been pegged as a phenomenal defensive coach, and that pedigree has just not been shown the past couple of seasons. Certainly think with the return of 6 starters, though, they can get back to potentially dominating in this conference. Look at the starting defensive ends. Jimmy Scott is going to be coming back. He was phenomenal. Very good against the run. Highly productive player. Jaden Moore comes over from Oregon. He was quiet for them in his 2 seasons. Blaine Spires comes over from UTSA and Bowling Green, where he played a collective 1,700 career snaps after 5 years. Mainly just a rotational end, though. Joey Zielinski was a pretty good player for Eastern Michigan, mainly doing work versus the run. So they're going to hit the portal hard here to address the defensive end room. The interior, they're going to get back Nick James. He was averaging about 400 snaps. Sean Fitzsimmons was great in 300-plus reps across 9 games, being a really strong run defender. Isaiah Neal saw plenty of action in 400-plus reps. Really struggled, though. Francis Baru was a good run stopper, 250 snaps. So I think this is a veteran group with depth. I think Jimmy Scott's going to be great for them. I think the interior defensive line will be playing better. And, of course, I hope some of these transfers will come around as well. So I think the front four is going to improve.
I think the front four will certainly improve. I like some of the players they have here. Sean Fitzsimmons, 32 total tackles for him, beg your pardon. 5 tackles for loss, 1.5 sacks. He was really solid last year. Jimmy Scott, 30 total tackles, 13 tackles for loss, 6 sacks. Great numbers there. He's a good asset. I'm excited to see him this year. Isaiah Neal, 21 total tackles, 3 tackles for loss, 1.5 sacks there. Nick James, 19 total tackles, 2 tackles for loss. Francis Burrow as well had 15 total tackles and 3 tackles for loss, 1.5 sacks for him. He's a decent player that they returned further down the depth chart. He was a true freshman last year on the interior. Blaine Spires from Bowling Green, he's a guy that had 3 total tackles last year for loss, had 1 sack, 2 QB hurries. He had 10 QB hurries and 5 sacks in 2023. He can certainly be productive. Joey Zielinski was solid at times, 29 total tackles, 5.5 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, 5 QB hurries at Eastern Michigan. He's a decent player overall. And then Jaden Moore, he was, a guy that was at Oregon, a high-value player for them, but didn't do anything in terms of he's a high-value recruit. 6 total tackles and 2 QB hurries for him. Overall, this profile will be a pretty solid unit. I like what they have here. I think the front part of this defense should be pretty solid in this 4-3 unit.
Now you look at the biggest strength on the entire football team, the linebackers. Kyle Lewis, one of the top backers in the country. He was elite in all areas, staggering production that also included 4 interceptions. He splits out and spends lots of time in the slot as well. Great versus the run. This guy's just absolutely absurd. His top dance partner's back, Rasheem Biles, who was very good in coverage. Great versus the run. Also had quite staggering production. Braylon Lovelace will be the full-time middle linebacking starter. He saw 450 snaps last year and was a pretty good producer. He did struggle with consistency versus the run and was second on the team in missed tackle percentage. Continues the theme of guys that were good in coverage, though, in the middle that coached that area very well. Backups Nick Lappy, Jeremiah Marcellin, both saw 5 games each and are veterans of the program. This is a great group here. Love what they can bring to the table. I know you're about to rattle off some numbers, Nick, of how great these guys were. Even with the loss of Brandon George, there's not going to be any fall off here.
Yeah, a lot of stats here for me to talk about. I certainly have a lot of positivity to say about these 2 linebackers, beginning with Kyle Lewis, who was phenomenal for this team. 101 total tackles last year, 16 tackles for loss, 7 sacks, 4 picks, including a pick 6. 3 pass breakups. He was phenomenal. Rasheem Biles was great in coverage. He had 82 total tackles, 15 tackles for loss, 5.5 sacks, a pick 6, and 9 pass breakups. That's almost 200 total tackles between your top 2 guys. Great to get that back. Braylon Lovelace was also not bad in coverage at times last year. 53 total tackles, 11 tackles for loss, 4 sacks, a pick 6, and a pass breakup for him as well. These were very productive linebackers. You get back 3 guys there that have 50-plus tackles and 11. They each have double-digit tackles for loss, more than 11 for each of them. That's an impressive number there. These guys find a way to get in the backfield. Nick Lappy's a good player to have in terms of depth production as well. I love this linebacking core, one of the best in the conference, an absolute strength for this team.
Now I move to the secondary. The pass defense last year was quite poor for Narduzzi, and this is a guy growing up watching him at Michigan State had phenomenal pass defenses, so I'd love to see them get back to that form. The cornerback group returns an experienced tandem. Rashad Battle, Tamon Lynham. Battle was a starter and played quite well in coverage and against the run. Lynham was solid in coverage, but not as stellar versus the run on the other hand, but both played 400-plus snaps. 2 transfers arrived. Rashawn Murray from Penn West, California, and Zion Ferguson, who didn't play as a freshman last year for UNC, so I'm not all that confident in the depth. Nigel Maynard, Shadarian Harrison didn't play last year either, so it's a very inexperienced cornerback room. Safety group returns a great veteran, Javon McIntyre. He was below average in coverage, but he's been an outstanding run defender the past 2 seasons. Cruz Brookins will step into the starting lineup, offering quality play last year, nearly 300 snaps. Only missed 1 tackle and showed pop versus the run. Kavar Bynes Marquez comes over from UC Davis. He was an elite slot corner for them across 3 years. Jesse Anderson also played in a few games last season. So I think the safety group's in a tad better standing than the corner group in terms of reliable bodies. Secondary should improve and remain a playmaking unit, but if health comes into question, especially at corner, I'm going to be significantly worried. So I think with the coaching, some of the guys that do get back, Nick, I'm confident in the secondary, but again, I'm so worrisome because Narduzzi seems to have been off a touch the last couple of years, and now things are not optimal in terms of players.
Yeah, the secondary is a little weak. I don't like the depth either. They were not good at all against the pass rush. They're 123rd in the nation, which is absolutely downright abysmal. They got torched through the air over and over again, which was a shame because they had a really strong run defense last year, 265 yards per game. It's just not good enough. And the depth, I'm a little concerned and iffy on it. I think, Javon McIntyre is a solid player to return, 51 total tackles, 4 tackles for loss, 3 pass breakups for him. Tamon Lehman as well, 36 total tackles, 2 tackles for loss, a pick, and 7 pass breakups over Rashad Battle. I think was the best player overall in the secondary last year. 36 total tackles, 8 pass breakups, and a tackle for loss for him. Trunce Brokens as well, 35 total tackles, 2 picks, 2 pass breakups. They went to the portal but didn't add enough depth in my opinion. Rashawn Murray comes up from a lower tier school. Same thing with Kevon Baines Marquez from UC Davis, so he was not bad for that team last year. Overall, this is a secondary that I'm a little iffy on. I just don't think they did enough in the portal to address their needs, and I don't like what they return necessarily. I don't know if we're going to see a massive improvement. It will certainly improve from 123rd in the nation, but how much of an improvement? I think that's the story you want to keep an eye on.
Look at the defensive verdict. The defense for Pitt gave up yards and points and struggled versus the pass. They're great at creating negative plays. They had 18 turnovers, top 10 pass rush / tackle for loss unit. And again, like you said, they were good against the run. I've been waiting on Narduzzi to once again have an elite pass defense. I just don't think it's going to happen anytime soon, but they won't be as bad against the pass as last year. I think the front seven's off the chart, so I think this is going to be a good unit. They're going to improve across the board. The grade I gave them was a B+, which I know might be a little bit high considering the numbers you see there. But they were great at creating havoc last year, Nick, and sometimes that's the most important thing. Just ask Kyle McCord.
Certainly a Jekyll and Hyde like unit where the run defense is so strong and they're so dominant in that regard, but the pass defense is an absolute disaster. They torched a couple of teams last year and really was able to put some things and get some big picks, such as Kyle McCord, like you alluded to there. But overall, they've struggled in a lot of those games. They got torched in that bowl game against Toledo on defense, and they struggled in that one. 28.1 points per game was unacceptable for a Pitt defense. They were great against the run. They will probably be great against the running this year. Can they improve against the pass? That's the biggest concern, something I'm keeping an eye on. If they could find a way to even just cut that number down to the 240, 230 range, I think that would really go a long way in helping out this defense. The secondary has to get off the field and play some solid football overall. Love the front seven. I'm worried about the back half of this team big time. The depth does concern me as well. Got to see what they can do if they can progress at all this year on the pass defense side.
250 plus pass yards allowed in 4 straight games in the year. Before that, a couple of 300-yarders, so they certainly need to improve in that area big time. Look at the schedule and the prediction. I really like this Pitt team. I think this offense can really ascend with all they have as long as the offensive line can march forward. They can really be a problem for most opponents. Well, I think the defense has the capability to be really special, and Narduzzi is a heck of a coach. If he can really showcase his expertise, then I think they can be nasty. It's a very tough schedule for Pitt. The home and away splits are incredibly favorable, though. And they can certainly knock off a contender as well. I've been wrong before, though. I picked this team a few years back to win 10-plus games. They went 3-9, which was a significant outlier, as it was only the second losing season in a decade of coaching for Narduzzi here. So the expectations have been put on this team before, and they failed miserably. I'm afraid that could happen again, but I just think they have enough here, and things are much more clear, especially at quarterback, and I think they'll improve in all areas. 9-3 for me. I think they can contend most certainly. This is a tough schedule, though. I think losing to Notre Dame, Georgia Tech, and at Syracuse with the Orange getting revenge is certainly the ones I'm circling. 10 wins are certainly on the docket, Nick. I think they're over-under in the books is like 7.5 or something. They should smash the heck out of that. This will be a good team this season.
This is a pretty solid team here. I'm not as high on you because I think the secondary will hold this team back. I have them at 8 wins. I think they will lose to Louisville. That's my additional loss, although they're at home, so they could win that game. Pat Narduzzi has a very intriguing record at Pitt. You have the 11-3 season in 2021 where they won the ACC, also the 9-win season in 2022, a couple 8-win seasons sprinkled in there. But you also have a 5-7 2017, a 6-5 2020, and then obviously that 2023 with the 3-9 record that you spoke about before. That was an absolute brutal disaster for them. They went 7-6 last year with a bowl loss to a MAC team. They want to improve that record. I think they will improve that record this year, but I'm curious to see how much improvement we get out of this team. I like some of the pieces. I love what the offense can do, but I worry about the O-line. I like what the defense has in some regards, but I worry about the secondary. 2 key things are holding me back from getting this team closer to a 9-10 win team. The O-line and the secondary. If they can find improvements on O-line, clean up their pass block and run block, and if the secondary can just be a little bit better, increase and cut down that yards per game number from 265 to like 240, 230, this team could be a team contending for the ACC. The pieces are there. I just don't know if they can put the puzzle together right now.
That's it for today's episode. Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.